and thank you for staying with us. My name is Edie Sun, and I'm honored to be joined this afternoon by United States Senator Cory Gardner. Senator Gardner, thank you very much for participating with us today. Now, as you know, we will be using an adjusted format since former Governor Hickenlooper declined our invitation to participate in this debate. So to kick things off, please introduce yourself to our online viewers.
Well, thank you very much, Edie, and thank you to Club 20 for hosting this opportunity for us to be here to talk about issues that matter to the people of Western Colorado. I greatly appreciate Club 20 doing this. I consider the Club 20 debate the kickoff of the Colorado political season to our elections in general, the grand dame of Colorado politics. I've been here as an observer, I've been here as a candidate, and I'm certainly grateful and very honored to be here today. I believe in Western Colorado. I believe in the people of Western Colorado. I believe in the opportunities that Western Colorado represents for the state of Colorado and this country. The opportunities to create a better tomorrow, to give our children a better way of life, to create freedom and opportunity, to respect and protect our environment, to create jobs and opportunity for our families. You know, Colorado doesn't end at Vail on I-70. I-70 East doesn't end at Strasburg. There's more to Colorado than just the Front Range. And that's why I believe in the power of the voices of Club 20 and the Western Slope. Together we've fought to help create new opportunities and economies. We've fought for greater energy opportunities. We've fought to protect our environment through the Great American Outdoors Act. We've fought to bring the Bureau of Land Management headquarters to Grand Junction, Colorado. I fought to pass the Drought Contingency Plan to protect our upper basin states from the lower basin states in the times of severe drought. I fought to make sure that we protected endangered species in the Colorado River, to extend laws that provide funding for our endangered species fisheries recoveries in Western Colorado. And I've also fought to make sure that we fix the fire borrowing practice that led to a lack of resources as we address the needs of our forest in Colorado. And when I came to Colorado and visited the Grizzly Fire, the Pine Gulch Fire, talking to our Forest Service managers who now have the resources they need to fight our fires. That's the work that we've done for Western Colorado. You know, if you think about the Great American Outdoors Act and what it means, it's the most significant conservation bill this state has seen in over 50 years. It's the largest infusion of cash into our nation's public lands in the history of our country. And I believe that Grand Junction, Western Colorado, is the gateway to public lands in our nation. And Grand Junction is the capital of our public lands. It's clear in the movement of the Bureau of Land Management headquarters right here in Grand Junction and the jobs that will create. The Great American Outdoors Act is going to create thousands of jobs across the state of Colorado. Thousands of jobs, including right here in Grand Junction, in communities that were hit hardest by the first wave of the pandemic, who saw their ski resorts close early, their ski lifts empty, and their hotels shut down. The Great American Outdoors Act wasn't easy. It took decades to get it accomplished. If you look at the work that we had to do to bring Republicans and Democrats together in a bipartisan fashion, that's what we did. I remember going over to the White House, encouraging the president to sign the bill. And he did, because of the great bipartisan work that we did. Now, my opponent, John Hickenlooper, had an opportunity to be here today. Now, if you're going to stand up for Western Colorado, you got to show up for Western Colorado. His plan for Western Colorado is to destroy jobs, 230,000 oil and gas jobs across our state. That's his plan for economic recovery. His plan is to hurt farmers and ranchers with the passage of the Green New Deal that would cost Colorado and this country $93 trillion. We can do better for this state. We can do better for this country. Governor Hickenlooper isn't not just showing up today, he didn't even show up for his own ethics trial when he had the chance to explain to the people of Colorado why he violated the state's constitution. You know, over the last 12 hours, we've had a lot change in this country. We lost a great justice, a leader for this nation. And if you disagreed with her, that's fine, but you have to admit she's an American icon. But she had a friendship on the court that we should all model ourselves after. Justice Scalia and her represent the best ideals of bringing people together. And we need to continue to do that at Club 20 and beyond. Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you very much, Senator. We have a number of questions that have been submitted by Club 20 members from across the Western Slope. Before we go to those, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the issue that you just raised, which is the unfortunate death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg yesterday. 4 years ago, upon the death of Justice Antonin Scalia, you said the following: "Our next election is too soon, and the stakes are too high. The American people deserve a role in this process, as the next Supreme Court justice will influence the direction of this country for years to come. The next president of the United States should have the opportunity to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court." Do you stand by those words today?
Yeah, thank you, Edie, for the question. And in the last 24 hours, we've seen this. And I agree with Senator Joe Manchin, who was addressing the country this morning when he said, out of decency and respect for this country, we need to make sure that we are giving time for personal reflection on this loss of an American icon. And I hope that before the politics begin, because there will be plenty of time for that we have some time for this country to reflect on the legacy of a great woman who led to our nation's highest court and the work that she has done for this nation, whether you agree or not. There is time for debate, there is time for politics, but the time for now is to pray for the family and to make sure that we keep their family in our hearts and prayers as we mourn as a nation.
Thank you, Senator. Moving to the questions that have been submitted by Club 20 members in previous weeks. What is the federal government's role in the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic? Are you concerned about our nation's growing deficit?
Well, if you look at what happened with COVID-19, we have to fight to make sure we get our country back open again and back on track again. This isn't a situation where a restaurant closed because it had bad food or a hotel emptied because it wasn't clean. Our mayors, our governors, our president said to close down, socially distance out of love for our country and our community, because we needed to stop the spread of COVID-19 and flatten the curve. We have an obligation to get our country and our economy moving again. Prior to the pandemic, we saw record growth in our economy, record wage growth in Colorado, record low unemployment rates for our state and across this country, and we have to get back to those levels. I've worked closely with Governor Polis to make sure that we had the necessary personal protective equipment to get through this pandemic and to praise our incredible frontline workers who have done a magnificent job protecting the people of this country. I've fought for the CARES Act and for small businesses. I've fought to get over 200,000 tests from South Korea, the work that I did through my Foreign Relations Committee, to the people of Colorado, work that Governor Polis said we could not have done without Senator Gardner, and the fight that we were able to help Colorado with. Look, I'm a fighter, and I'm going to continue to fight for this state. I'm going to get things done for this state. I'm the third most bipartisan member of this of the congressional delegation and the Senate. I continue to make sure that we have work being done on behalf of all Coloradans, and I will never abandon Colorado. But John Hickenlooper, if he were here today, he'd say that more work needs to be done, but he's already abandoned the people of Western Colorado. He's already given up on the Western Slope. He won't even show up at the very first debate to kick off this election season. And so I'm going to continue to do the work that we need to get through this pandemic together, to get people employed again. You know, I was very disappointed when John Hickenlooper opposed a bill that we voted on just a few weeks ago that would have provided Coloradans with unemployment benefits, that would have provided the people of Colorado with an opportunity to get funding for education, to get our schools open again, to fund the post office. And he said no, because to him, politics are more important.
Thank you, Senator. Moving to our next question about agriculture, how will you protect agriculture and defend Colorado water rights? And how can you get your point across to members of the Senate who don't understand ag and water rights issues in the West?
You know, I have a lot in common with Western Colorado, and that's my agricultural and rural roots. I grew up in a town that is surrounded by farm ground, corn, wheat, and cattle. I grew up working at a farm equipment dealership that represents the best in Colorado agriculture. In Western Colorado, I fought for peach growers who were affected this year by freeze. I fought for corn farmers and cattle farmers who were affected by COVID-19 to help get them relief on prices, to relief on tariffs that have hurt their markets, to continue to open up new markets and new opportunities for farmers, passed legislation to open up new Asian markets for our farmers and ranchers, to make sure that we have ways to keep existing families on our farms and ranches and to bring new generations of families back to our farms and ranches. That's the kind of work that I will do. Now, if John, and will continue to do, if John Hickenlooper actually cared about agriculture, he would be here. And he would talk about his Colorado water plan that he developed. But the problem with the plan is there's no action. I actually support additional water storage. I've passed the drought contingency plan for the Colorado River to protect our water rights. I've got a threefold strategy when it comes to water that we've implemented, that we've actually put dollars into the state and created concrete results. Look, Wayne Aspinall, the Western Slopes congressman, once said that in the West, when you touch water, you touch everything. The problem with John Hickenlooper is he thinks it's all about the Front Range and Denver and Boulder. It's why he's not here today. It's why he won't show up now. And if you think he's going to show up for you in Washington, you're wrong. Unless, of course, it's to benefit himself. Because if you're going to abandon Colorado now, like he has, he will continue to do that if he were elected to the United States Senate. I'm going to fight to protect Colorado's water. I'm going to fight to keep the federal government's hands off of Colorado's water. You know, I fought long and hard to make sure that the waters of the United States rule didn't hurt our farmers and ranchers. John Hickenlooper supports implementing the water of the United States rule. That would devastate agriculture across Colorado. We're not going to let it happen.
Thank you, Senator. So let's talk health care now. Is an affordable, accessible, and efficient healthcare system the responsibility of the state government or the federal government, in your opinion? And what should be done to reduce healthcare costs?
Well, thank you, Edie, for the question. Look, I support a healthcare system that results in higher quality of care and lower cost, one that covers pre-existing conditions. That's why I've introduced legislation to make sure that we protect people with pre-existing conditions. It's why I want to make sure that we have risk pools. I helped the governor of Colorado get a waiver for Colorado to lower the cost of insurance. We got that secured through HHS working together in a bipartisan fashion. We need to make sure that we have insurance across state lines to continue our work together on new technologies to reduce the cost for rural Coloradans, like telemedicine. In Grand Junction, Western Colorado, we've seen great innovations to our healthcare systems. But what John Hickenlooper would say, if he took the time to be here today, was that we should have a government-run healthcare system, that we should have a mandate that government take over. But that would destroy our healthcare systems in rural Colorado. We already have, under Governor Hickenlooper's leadership, a state that is in the bottom half when it comes to access to care in Colorado. He did nothing to make that better. His idea is a government-run healthcare system. His idea is to go back to the days of a promise that we know he made that failed, that if you liked your doctor, you could keep your doctor. He supported that effort, and we know what happened in Western Colorado and beyond. We saw hundreds of thousands of people in Colorado lose their health insurance. It was canceled thanks to people like John Hickenlooper and his support for a failed system. And it's why he wants to replace it now. But his idea to replace it is to replace it with socialism and a government-run healthcare. And that's not what Colorado wants or needs. Look, I believe in a healthcare system that drives down costs. I've introduced legislation to do just that and will continue to work in a bipartisan fashion for a system that helps Coloradans get what they need in a patient-centered healthcare system. Not a system that looks like the DMV run by the state of Colorado or the federal government. We can do this working together, as I have and will continue to do.
Changing gears now. Senator, do you agree with U.S. Fish and Wildlife's proposed delisting of gray wolves? And how do you feel about Colorado's ballot measure to reintroduce wolves in western Colorado?
Yeah, thank you, Edie, very much for that question. I know this is an important ballot issue, but again, there are a lot of voices in Colorado that aren't being heard as they should be. Western Slope voices, farmers, ranchers who are concerned about what happens with the reintroduction of the wolf. Look, we know that there are wolf populations that are already calling Colorado home. That's the work of state officials who have identified this. In fact, we've already seen that in the news multiple times over the last several years. But I think the people of Colorado who are behind this initiative need to make sure that they're working with the concerns of ranchers and farmers who know this could impact their livelihoods, the sheep growers in western Colorado who are concerned about it, the people who are concerned about what this could do to our deer and elk populations. And so I really hope that the impact of this initiative, which I don't think should be borne completely by the Western Slope, are truly thought out. And that's why I don't support this initiative, but believe that the people of Colorado across all four corners need to come together in a way that's responsible to those who have great concerns with this initiative. You know, John Hickenlooper has a chance to be here tonight to talk to the people about how he would protect Western Colorado. But he's not, and I'll say it again. If you're going to stick up and stand up for Western Colorado, you got to show up. And he's not here. Why? Because he doesn't care to take the time. He's abandoned Western Colorado, and he'll do it again. If you think this is new, look what he did to abandon the state constitution and the work that he tried to do over and over to cover up what he did in violations of the ethics laws. Look, Western Colorado, the people are anxious for more opportunities. Not less. And that's why we need to work as a state with all four corners to make sure we get this job done.
Senator, with the largest wildfire in our state's history occurring less than 15 miles to the north of Grand Junction, what more can be done to improve forest health, improve water quality and quantity, and reduce wildfire risk?
It's a very important question. Just a few weeks ago, I had the chance to visit the Fire Command Center here in Grand Junction. I was over in Glenwood Springs at the Grizzly Fire, talking about the needs of both Glenwood Canyon, Glenwood Springs, the communities like Newcastle, up and down the river, and the fire that we had here, the Pine Gulch Fire. One of the most important things we did in a bipartisan fashion was to pass the fire borrowing fix that no longer cannibalize other dollars that are being used in the department that otherwise could have been used to prevent next year's fires, to fight this year's fires. So we passed this fix that will allow us the resources we need to fight forest fires. That's in place, and according to the Forest Service supervisors and district rangers, it is working. They have the resources that they need. But we also need management practices that are going to reduce catastrophic fires, making sure that we have active management that works with communities on collaboration. That's why I passed legislation in the Farm Bill to give greater tools to forest managers to help prevent forest fires, to do a better job of preventing catastrophic wildfires. I passed legislation, the Wildfire Technology Act, to make sure that we are protecting firefighters from injury, to make sure that we're doing a better job applying the newest technologies in fighting fires. Passed that with bipartisan support, the work that we have been able to do. And I passed legislation to make it a felony to interfere with a firefighting operation if you fly a drone and it interferes with the firefighting operation that is taking place. You know, John Hickenlooper had a chance to be here tonight, and he's not. Because he doesn't want to speak to the Western Slope about a radical agenda that moves this country more toward the failures of government and away from the successes that the people of Grand Junction and Western Colorado have had. We've had chances to work together. We will continue to work together to make improvements to our forest management. But again, you can't abandon the Western Slope to have those conversations. You have to be here. And that's why I'm here, and clearly why he is not.
Thank you, Senator. What role should the United States play, if any, in the energy stabilization and reduction of reliance on Russian fuel sources for our foreign allies?
That's a great question. I mean, we have in Western Colorado some of the most rich resources across the world when it comes to oil and gas. The Piceance Basin has more natural gas than Saudi Arabia. Jordan Cove presents us with an opportunity to get Colorado jobs created, to build these Colorado jobs and projects and export this clean burning fuel to our allies in Asia so they're no longer responsible or reliant on Russian energy. We have a chance to create those jobs here, to be North American energy independent and secure. There are 230,000 oil and gas jobs that oil and gas workers across the state of Colorado that represent a $31 billion economy that pay over $1 billion in taxes to schools, to build roads, to help our communities. Those are good paying jobs, and instead of celebrating mass layoffs of this industry, we ought to be fighting for more opportunities. It's why I support Jordan Cove. My opponent does not support Jordan Cove. It's why I oppose the Green New Deal. John Hickenlooper supports the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal would ban and cause mass layoffs of 230,000 oil and gas workers in Colorado. That's not a recipe for economic recovery. It's a disaster for Colorado. Instead of getting through the pandemic by destroying jobs, let's build up jobs. Let's create more opportunities, and yes, for renewable energy as well. This isn't a zero-sum game. But to John Hickenlooper, it is a zero-sum game. That's why he's not here tonight. He can't be here because he's already abandoned the belief that we can have oil and gas jobs and balance them with renewable energy jobs. We have done that, and we will do that, and I will continue to do that. But to do it, you got to show up. To stand up, you got to show up. And that's why I continue to fight for Colorado, and I will, and I have. And we're going to do this together, expanding opportunities for all four corners of this state, not just the Front Range.
Thank you, Senator. What do you view as the three most critical issues affecting Colorado? And how will you address those issues in the U.S. Senate?
Look, we have to obviously get through two crises right now, the pandemic, the global pandemic, and the economic crisis that it created. Three things that we have to do. Number one, we have to make sure that we continue to stop the spread and flatten the curve of the coronavirus. The second thing, of course, is to help individuals, making sure that they're able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, put food on the table, to get through this together. The third thing we have to do is to help businesses to make sure that they can keep their doors open, keep people hired. Now, these aren't things that you do one and then two and then three. They're things that you have to do all three at the same time to build this recovery. So we have an economic challenge and a health challenge that we have to address. And then we have to realize that this state is, again, more than just the Front Range. I-70 doesn't end at Vail. It is about the north, the south, the east, the west, all four corners of our state. If John Hickenlooper knew that, he would be here today. If he were here, he would say, well, we need to work with the state and the federal government to make sure they have the resources that they needed. I did that, and I will continue to do that. It's the reason we have hundreds of thousands of test kits from South Korea. It's the reason we have millions of masks entering the United States from Taiwan. The work that I did with those countries to make sure we had the resources that we needed in Colorado. We've got to make sure that we address our economy, we address our health care, and that we address all four corners of the state so that our east and our west are successful. Because our state is only as strong as the weakest area amongst us. We had some of the most successful years right before the pandemic. John Hickenlooper's plan would destroy those opportunities, cut those wages, increase the regulations, fire workers. That's his plan for Colorado. And I'm going to make sure that we fight for Western Colorado, fight for our values of opportunity and freedom in Western Colorado.
Moving on to our final question. Many voters in rural Colorado are concerned that the rural voice is being diminished or taken for granted. For example, they point to candidates on both sides of the aisle refusing to participate in publicly held candidate forums, even in their own districts. How can we ensure that civil discourse endures and the rural voice is not lost?
I'm the only rural Coloradan who's elected to the statewide. I think each and every day about what it means to carry that voice, to be that fighter. I'm the only one who lives more than 20 miles away from the Denver-Boulder corridor. I understand the challenges that we face, understand that when we had a natural gas play in eastern Colorado, it created jobs and opportunities. And instead of killing an industry and laying people off, we ought to welcome those jobs to rural Colorado, to expand value-added opportunities. That's why I've led legislation and passed the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act to create new markets for farmers and ranchers. That's why I supported free trade agreements to open up new markets for farmers and ranchers. It's why I've fought against tariffs that I believe hurt farmers and ranchers. It's why we've had successes in making sure that we create opportunity zones across Colorado through the 2017 tax cuts to bring more investments and jobs into rural Colorado. Now, if John Hickenlooper were here today, he'd say that he stood up for rural Colorado, that he tried to fight for rural Colorado, but you know what he did? He called rural Coloradans backwards. He lied to rural Colorado sheriffs. If you live in a town like mine, you see signs going out of town that say, "This highway is not plowed at nighttime." That's how much he cares for rural Colorado. Calling rural Coloradans backwards, lying to county sheriffs, not even plowing their roads at night. I'm a fighter for all of Colorado, for all four corners of Colorado. I have the most legislation signed into law than the entire Colorado congressional delegation because I'm not afraid to work with Republicans and Democrats to get the job done for this state. I will never abandon it. I will continue to be here. And the question is, if you're afraid of what happens because rural Colorado's losing its voice, then show up in rural Colorado. Show up at the candidate forums. Show up at the Club 20 debate. That's why I'm here, because I believe in the power of rural Colorado.
Thank you so much for all of those responses, Senator Gardner. Wrapping up, We'll now move into closing remarks. Please tell the folks tuning in how you plan to represent Western Colorado in the U.S. Senate if you're reelected.
Well, I just want to say again, thank you to Club 20 for the chance to be here. I believe in this state. I believe in the power of Western Colorado. I believe that Western Colorado's voice needs to be loud and strong, and that's why I continue to be the fighter and the champion for Western Colorado. When you go into our great state capitol and you see that mural that's written on the wall, you see a poem written by Thomas Hornsby Farrell, and it talks about all of the blessings of our state from corner to corner. And nowhere is that more visible than the heritage of Western Colorado. The values that we share. We're just a few miles away here from Colorado National Monument, Independence Monument. And when we look to that next horizon, we don't look down, we look up, because we see optimism in every vale and valley across the western slope and around this country. The people of Western Colorado are proud. There's dignity in their work and their life and everything that they do. But they don't want somebody who's going to tell them their job's not good enough, to tell them that their way of life is wrong, to take away their health care because you think that government knows better than you. I believe in the people of this state to lead their lives, to empower themselves, to create opportunity for their families. And that's why I'm the third most bipartisan member of the United States Senate. It's why I've moved the Bureau of Land Management headquarters to Grand Junction. It's why I passed the Great American Outdoors Act to create thousands of jobs to protect our environment, to protect our land. It's why I've worked to protect our water rights and fought against federal encroachment to those water rights. It's why I believe that recreationalists, environmentalists, oil and gas producers, farmers and ranchers, and the business people in towns like Grand Junction and Craig and Durango can thrive when they have a representative who believes in them, who won't abandon them, but who will continue to fight for them and with them. It's how we're going to have and continue to have better forest management policies that will allow us to utilize those resources to protect and conserve our forests in conditions that allow generations to come to enjoy them. It's the work that we can do together as Colorado, not as just Denver or Boulder, not as just the Front Range or I-25, but as one state united to get through a pandemic, to create a brighter economy, and to make sure that this state remains the greatest state in the United States of America. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
And thank you for your participation in today's event, Senator. We appreciate your willingness to join us and to share your perspective on the many important issues affecting Western Colorado. And now I'll turn it back over to Club 20 Executive Director, Kristen Reese.
Thank you to all of the candidates joining us today to help the voters of our region better understand how each candidate plans to represent their district if they gain election in November. We hope all of our viewers found these debates to be informative and useful in deciding who to vote for this fall. Club 20 has also taken positions on several ballot measures, and those positions can be found on the Club 20 website beginning Thursday of next week. Thank you again to Chevron, Colorado Mesa University, and all of our partners who have made these debates possible. We couldn't do it without you. We wish everyone a safe, healthy, and informed election season. Thank you.